We also believe that in the future we can prevent bad things from happening by just being better. Tell me you guess my future and I'm mapped onto your fantasy. Hey y'all, my name is Taylor. I'm a therapist and I love metal music. So let's talk about metal music and mental health. Mental health. Let's go. Lately, I've been obsessed with, in love with, listening to on repeat Sleep Token's new album, Take Me Back to Eden. And let me tell you, this album has a lot of mental health power behind it. But before we get into any of that and really analyze all the lyrics, I want to tell you something really important, which is that we have a support wall. What is that? A support wall is a place where you can open up about anything that you're going through, and our community will reply with encouragement. The coolest thing is that it's actually right here in the comments. So if at any point you can relate to or you feel something about what I'm saying and you want to share, please share in the comments by tagging at HeartSupport and we'll reply. It's super important to us. That's how we create community. So don't ever be afraid to comment and see what happens. You just might get what you need in return. Okay, so let's talk about Sleep Token. I've listened to this album so many times, and as I was getting ready to make this video, I listened to it straight through, and there is something so powerful about it. Like, I swear it pulled up in me a well of like unaccessed emotion that I had been needing and wanting to process. So I'm really excited to talk with you about it because I think there's a lot of really good stuff here that we can all relate to and talk about. And I've got some therapist tips for you in it as well. Let's get into it. I'm not going to go over every song. We could spend so much time on this. So I'm just going to go over a few and some of the lyrics that really stood out to me. But I'd love to hear if there's something else that stood out to you as well. I know Sleep Token has a lot of lore around it and a whole community. I'm not so read up on all of that, so I apologize if I get the meanings wrong or anything like that. This is just my interpretation. We're going to take it from the summoning. Chokehold is also a great song. We start off the album with a bang, and I think a lot of times, if we're taking it from a mental health perspective, there are certain things that keep us stuck, like we're in a chokehold. But take it from Granite. Okay, so you'll never have to talk about it. Never wanted to talk about it. I was more than just a body in your passenger seat. And you were more than just somebody I was destined to meet. I see you go half blind when you're looking at me, but I am between the secondhand smoke and the glass on the street. You gave me nothing whatsoever but a reason to leave. You say you want me, but you know I'm not what you need. But I am. You say you want me, but you know I'm not what you need. So good. A question that I'm often asked is, why do I want things that aren't good for me? Something I hear my clients say all of the time. And this often refers to people, friendships, a variety of different things. And the truth is that we often want what's familiar, even if it isn't healthy for us. Because what's familiar is comfortable. And as we know, change can be really challenging and really uncomfortable. That's a piece of it. We often want what's familiar. The other piece of it is that we often want to heal what was painful through what was familiar. That can get a little complicated, so I like to use an example. Let's say growing up, you grew up in a household where your emotions were always dismissed. You were maybe told that you were too sensitive or that you shouldn't cry or you shouldn't express how you were feeling. And as an adult, you might find yourself in relationships where your emotions are often dismissed, where your partner is saying that you're dramatic or you're too much, something like that. Why would you want to be in a relationship with someone who caused you such a familiar type of pain? Well, a lot of times our subconscious is trying to heal that pain. And the way that it thinks that it can do that is by being with someone who has the same qualities or does the same things
and changing them or having a different experience with that person. So we often have to actively recognize what pain we've experienced in the past so that we don't unconsciously fall into familiar pain in the future. It's really unfortunate, and it's often really frustrating because the truth is that even if we have amazing parents, nobody is perfect. So we can't go through life or childhood unscathed. And it's not always from our parents, but a lot of times some of the pain patterns that we experience are familial. So all of us have pain. And when we're little, we don't see nuance, right? So if our mom tells us one time, hey, be quiet, it's not time for that right now, our minds might make a generalization that, oh, well, I shouldn't use my voice ever. There's not really a good time for me to speak. Because when we're children, in particular, we're not good at seeing the nuance of the situation and we overgeneralize. And that often creates a pain pattern or a negative belief that we have about ourselves in the world. And then when something similar happens, we grab onto it and use it as evidence like, oh, this is true. I shouldn't use my voice because this also happened. And our brain is more susceptible to seeing those patterns instead of seeing all of the evidence that we should use our voice. It's kind of a complicated experience because all of these things tie into each other. These beliefs that we have about ourselves, these beliefs that we have about relationship, these painful familiar patterns, we unconsciously recreate them, not out of desire to be in pain, but actually out of desire to heal. Sometimes our subconscious just isn't always good at knowing what we need and recognizing that there are a million other ways that we can heal besides putting ourselves back in the same situation and hoping that something will turn out differently. So good. Okay, this is kind of related to that. The next line in that section we just listened to, I see you go half blind when you're looking at me. Woo! When I hear this line, I think about how this person feels like they're really unseen. They're not being truly seen for who they are. You go half blind when you're looking at me. You don't see all of me. And we all do this because we all unintentionally project our own thoughts, feelings, experiences, and assumptions onto other people. We see what we want to see, not always who they are. And something I notice that happens a lot that increases this is when we make assumptions or tell stories about someone before we've met them. For example, I use a lot of dating analogies. I hope that's okay. But if you're going on a first date with someone and you Google them and you find their Instagram and you see what their social media presence looks like, and then you make all of these assumptions about them because of these associations you have with these things. And then before you even met them, you've already created this whole picture of them in your mind of what they're going to be like, what they don't like, what type of friends they might have, what their thought patterns might be, all based off of things that you sought out and found about them on the internet. But the truth is that those things might actually not mean what you think they mean, or they might not be a good representation, and they're definitely not a complete representation of who this person is. But once we've already made up our mind about something or someone, it is more difficult to change our minds than it is to just remain open to learning. If I already decide something, it's going to take a larger amount of evidence to change my mind than if I have keeping my mind open to all of the possibilities. What does this mean? It means that when we're meeting someone new for the first time, when we're entering into a new experience, it benefits us to remember that we want to gather enough data before we make a decision about who this person is or about what this situation is, what's possible here. Because if we don't, it's likely that we're actually looking at this person or this situation half blind. And if we can't see the whole picture, we might miss out on something. So try not to create the full picture before you have the full data set. Do you do that? Do you find yourself scrolling on Instagram, trying to get all of the information, making decisions and assumptions about people and opportunities and what's possible for you and what's not before you actually have all of the information? Or maybe you're on the other side. Do you feel like people don't really see you? Like they don't really know all of you and they have a lot of stories about you that aren't true? Tag at HeartSupport in the comments below and we'd love to support you. This is, you guys, this is my favorite song on the album. But I think that Ascensionism is so beautiful. It sounds like a trance. Like it like pulls me into this, like, so good. Okay, so let's listen to it. Just a little bit.
Who made you like this? Who encrypted your dark gospel in body language? Synapses snap back in blissful language. Tell me you met me in past lives, past life, past what might be eating me from the inside, darling. Half algorithm, half deity, glitches in the code, or gaps in a strange dream. Tell me you guessed my future and it mapped onto your fantasy. Tell me into your mannequin and I'll turn you into my puppetry. Won't you come and dance in the dark with me? Show me what you are. I am desperate to know. Nobody better than the perfect enemy. Digital demons make the night feel heavenly. Make it real, 'cause anything's better than the way I feel right now. I can offer you a blood-lit paradise. Diamonds in the trees, pentagrams in the night sky.
Oh, okay. Woohoo! Past might be what's eating me from the inside, darling. What is true about the past and why it often haunts us is because when painful things happen in our past, we tell ourselves a lot of the time that it was our fault, that there was something that we could have done to change it, that we did something wrong, that's why it happened. And maybe sometimes we did make a mistake and it was our fault, or maybe sometimes we contributed in some way. But for the vast majority of things, the vast majority of traumatic experiences that I see in my clients, it was not our fault. It was not their fault. But the reason the past feels so painful and eats you from the inside is because of this belief that it was. And if it's not our fault, why would we tell ourselves that it is? It's a really good question, and it also has a really simple answer. Because if we tell ourselves that it was our fault, then it gives us some semblance of ability to believe that we have control and that we are in control. And that often feels more tolerable than recognizing the truth, which is that bad things happen and life is uncertain. So instead, we create this painful narrative that it's our fault, that bad things happen because of something we did, that we are to blame, that we are wrong, that we are bad. And by believing this, we also believe that in the future we can prevent bad things from happening by just being better. But that's simply not true. Because unfortunately, a part of being human is that bad things happen. But if you feel like the past is eating you from the inside, it might be because there is past experiences that are unprocessed and there's stories you're telling yourself about your past that aren't true or aren't helpful. And if that's the case, this community is here for you. We love you, we care about you, and we want to hear about it. So comment below by tagging at HeartSupport and share. Starting to share those things and those stories in the past. When you share, you open up the possibility to see things differently. Because sometimes we don't even realize how warped our view is because we're the only person who's ever heard the story that we tell ourselves. Unfortunately, we aren't always the best at taking an unbiased perspective. So comment below. Turn me into your mannequin and I'll turn you into my puppet queen. Something I notice in toxic relationships, friendships, experiences is that a sign to look out for is if someone is changing themselves, if they are trying to fit into a mold in order to become what they think the other person wants. Now, this happens between individuals and relationships, but it also happens in community. It also happens on an individual basis where I see a lot of people come in and when they're so preoccupied with what other people think, they will try to mold themselves into what they think other people want, which sucks. Because what is so unfortunate is that no matter how perfect the mold that you create, no matter how good of a mold that you can contort yourself into, there's no one in this world who is universally liked. So in fact, the only thing you do when you do that is, one, you may be liked by some people, but it's not actually you that's liked, it's the mold that you fit yourself into. But you rob yourself of being liked and being seen and being cared for who you actually are. Because in the same way that there will always be people who don't like you, even if you try to fit into this perfect mold, there is 8 billion people in this world. There is going to be someone who loves you for exactly who you are. But if you're always trying to contort yourself into some version that you imagine is perfect enough to be likable by the most amount of people, you prevent yourself from actually being cared for by the people who would really love you for who you are. And it's a way to try to protect yourself. I see people do this all the time, that if I can just be perfect, if I can just fit this mold, then I can protect myself from pain. But there is no one person in this world who is perfect enough that nobody dislikes them. You can't perfect yourself into protection from pain. The most perfect person you know, the person that you see as being the beacon of what you wish you could be, they still experience pain. And if you can realize that and recognize that and believe that, then it can free you from always being so concerned with perception. Because what the really painful truth about this is that actually the more you try to perfect yourself into something, the more you care about other people's perception of you, the less protected you are from pain, the more pain you will find. It's a big bummer. If you find yourself always trying to be what you think other people want, always trying to be someone else, comment below, tag out HeartSupport. We're here for you. Okay, let's do quickly. Are you really okay?
I can see it in you even now. And don't you know I want to help you, but I don't know how.
And don't you know I want to help you, but I don't know how? It's a question I hear so often from people. How do I help my friend who's struggling with their mental health? How do I be there for my family member who has so much anxiety? How do I support someone as they're working through suicidal thoughts and feelings? And the biggest thing is to not be afraid to ask them how they're doing, to check in, and to be there, to listen. Listening will always be more powerful than speaking in these moments, especially if you're someone who feels like you don't have the words. Just listen and acknowledge and say, I hear you. This sounds really hard. I wish I had words to make it all better, but I don't. But so often when people are in such deep pain and we see them in pain, we don't know what to do with it, so we shy away from it. That's okay. But if you really do want to help, the best thing that you can do is be there. You don't have to have the words. You don't have to fix it. But if you can be there and you can sit with them in it, that is what you do. And then, if they aren't already, you encourage them to get help. And I always say the best way to encourage someone to get help is to get help yourself, if there's any possibility that you could use it too. Because people, I can't tell you how many clients I have who say, yeah, I went to therapy because my girlfriend started going to therapy and it really helped her, or my best friend started going to therapy, or my boss started going to therapy. Whatever it is, the best way to encourage someone to get help is to get help yourself. And the best thing that you can do for someone who's hurting is be there. But it can be really hard and it can be really emotionally draining to be there for someone who's in such a deep place of pain. So please make sure, if you are, to take care of yourself and to know your boundaries and your limits, because you can be there, but their healing is not your responsibility. You cannot be responsible for anyone else's thoughts or feelings or emotions. You can support them, but they're not yours. So you can't take responsibility for them. Honestly, this video is getting so long, you guys. And I still have a couple more songs left that I want to go through from this album. But I'm thinking maybe I just do a part 2. But more importantly, I really want you to open up if there's anything that you're struggling with. So please use the comments as a support wall. And let's just get and give some encouragement to each other. Have a great day. Mwah.
And don't you